So right now I'm going to go through and demonstrate a lot of the drums and percussion instruments. Sometimes these are called untuned percussion, as opposed to the tuned percussion, which is the melodic percussion. And I'll talk about that later. But for now, we're going to focus on drums and what we generally categorize as hand percussion, which is all the smaller instruments. So we'll get right into it. So this is an instrument that a lot of you know about. This is called a djembe. In some countries it's called other things. In Guinea, in the Susu language, they call it sambani. But we all know it as djembe. And it's West African. It's from basically the descendants of the Mali Empire, which are now split between the countries of Guinea and Mali, primarily. So it comes from that area of the bulge of Africa, kind of on the southern border, from the coast and then inland. And those are really the originators of this drum. And this drum is the drum gets its shape from being a mortar. And it's a large mortar. And just imagine this drum without the head on it, or without the ropes, and a solid base. And you can imagine people pounding rice or millet and making flour and pounding grain. So that's what this drum was. It was a large mortar, and I guess somebody decided to put a head on it and play it like a drum one day. So that's how we got the djembe. So to play the djembe, you scoot to the edge of your seat because we want to be ready and leaning forward and ready to play, not slouching back like that. So to play any of these instruments, you want to kind of sit at the edge of your seat. And the mistake that a lot of people make is they will think that it's like going to be like a car, and they're going to drive somewhere with it, so they tip it towards them like they're going to play it this way. So we don't want to do that because that's putting a lot of strain on our wrists here, bending your wrists a lot. We really don't want to do that. Natural position is just extension, like this. So I like to say if you're going like this, you're just going to be driving down the carpal tunnel. That's about the only place you're going to go. So just tip the drum away from you. And I'll talk also about when we're in a seated position, it's important to have the drum tipped for another reason too. But the main reason we tip it is that if I stood up and we had the drum strapped on, it would be hanging like this. It would be hanging right here. This would be the natural playing position, standing up. But of course we're sitting, but we still want to approximate the same relationship. So just tip the drum forward. And I could actually stack another chair up here, and I could be a little higher up, because I want to get it so the drum head is basically level with my elbows, roughly, so it's comfortable. So when you play the djembe, get it, put it between your legs, tip it forward, and then you should feel pretty comfortable with your hands on the drum from your fingertip to your elbow, pretty much in a straight line. And then the basic technique, and again, this is very cursory, just really, really basic. Flat hand, hit the drum between the middle and the edge, focusing the weight of your hand into your palm, keeping your hand relaxed and flat, and then bouncing off. So that would sound like this. Like this. And that's called a bass tone, or bass sound. So the bass is like a kind of subtone of the drum, and we get that woof woof sound because of the air inside the drum resonating. And if I put the drum flat on the floor, you can see that it makes a huge difference. Okay, so there's no resonance with the drum flat. So that's the other reason we want to tip it. The other tone that you're going to use most of the time is you can use what we call the open tone. And to play the open tone, you start off in the bass position, and then you want to get your thumb out of the way. So drag your hand back with your thumb till your palm comes off the drum, but your fingers stay on the drum. And your knuckle line is even with the edge of the drum. This is called the bearing edge here. We want to line up our knuckles there. Fingers are flat and all together like one unit, and the thumb is out of the way, so it's not hitting the edge. Don't want to do that. So that's my open tone position, and this will be a little bit higher pitched. And we're going to move from the elbow again. Hand comes up, back down, bounces off. So the open tone sounds like this. And you notice the sound is really dry and it's piercing. It's got a nice sound. It should be short. The djembe, you want to have it really tuned up high. Sound should be short. It should be dry. It should not have a lot of ring or after rings or overtones. So this is a nice djembe sound. So we have bass. And remember, the bass is hitting between the middle and the edge, not in the middle. The middle is a dead spot. You get more sound in between. Open tone is our middle sound, and that's flat fingers. So you need a little bit of the muscles in the back of your forearm here. You have to engage those muscles, because if I relax, my fingers curve, right? That's relaxed. This takes muscle. So that's where our open tone comes in. Just enough to get your hand flat. It doesn't have to be rigid, but just a nice flat fingers. Again, always bouncing up. So we don't want to get stuck on the drum. We don't want to do that. So just, okay, both hands. And then if you want to, a little more advanced, that would be the slap tone, which is, again, like the open tone, same position here, but now we're going to relax. So we can relax our fingers, get a little curve in our fingers, just a little, and our fingers might spread apart a little bit, and then we're doing the same stroke as the open tone, but now we're going to contact the drum with our fingertips, the drum head with our fingertips, so the weight's going to be out here now. So it's moving up from our palm to the lower part of our fingers, now it's at the tips, and the pitch moves accordingly. It's correlated. So now low, medium, and high, we've got a slap tone. So the slap is a harmonic. It's dividing up the head, similar to how you might put your finger lightly on a guitar string, say in the middle, and you pluck it and it's an octave higher, or a quarter of the way down. It could be 2 octaves higher, something like that. So it makes the head vibrate in a more complex way. And then we get this other tone called the slap tone. So that's like this. So bass, open tone, slap tone. And then we put them together to make different patterns. So when you're playing, you can use those 3 tones, and that's it on this drum. That's all the tones you need to know about the djembe. The other thing about the djembe is that everything's symmetrical, basically. So when you're playing the drum, you don't do anything different with your right hand or your left hand. It's just the techniques are the same, right to left. Totally symmetrical. And that brings us to the next drum, which is a little bit different, but related, and that is the conga drum. The conga drum is an Afro-Cuban drum from the Caribbean, from Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Caribbean. And it's completely different. It comes from a barrel, not from a mortar. It comes from a barrel. It's made with staves, as opposed to the djembe, which is carved out of a single piece of wood. The conga is made of slats of wood that have been steamed and bent and glued together. And this conga drum has feet on it, which is not traditional, but this is a classroom instrument or recreational instruments made for people to be able to sit it down in front of them flat and still have it raised up off the ground. So the sound can be more resonant and it doesn't tip over as easy, because the conga is tapered down, whereas the djembe is made to stand up because it was a kitchen tool, right? You needed to pound the grain, not have it fall over. So the bass of the djembe is flared out, whereas the bass of the conga drum is tapering in. So the feet on this drum, this is called the Sienta conga, made by Parapole, and it has these feet. So the feet are not a common feature, but it's a nice feature to have. And this conga drum is also a little bit smaller than your average, like professional conga model. But everything else about it is the same. So it's made of wood. It's got a natural skin head, cow skin, as opposed to the goat skin that's traditionally on a djembe. However, this djembe has a cow skin head. So traditionally djembes have goat skin, and the congas have goat skin. And the conga, we're going to do the same type of tones, but it's a little bit different technique. But essentially, you're still going to do bass, and you're going to do open tone. The conga is such a nice, warm, resonant drum. It's a very melodic drum. Djembe tends to be sharp and dry. Conga, warm, much more of a note there, pitch and a little bit more mellow than the djembe. So, but the open tone is the same. And the slap tone is basically the same. The only difference is sometimes we do what we call a muted slap on the conga drum. And if you have a conga drum that doesn't have feet, this one has the feet so I can stand it straight up, but traditionally you're going to have to tip the drum a little bit. So you tip it to your dominant side, like that, sideways. Not away from you like the djembe, but it's more of a sideways turn towards your dominant side. And then you can place your other hand, your non-dominant hand, kind of on the head, and we do what's called a muted slap. So same slap tone as the djembe, but we're going to leave our hand on the drum. Like that. And this drum is tuned pretty low, so I'm not getting a really sharp slap sound, but that's the basic technique. We can do a closed or muted bass tone, like this. We can do muted open tones, so instead of like this, we could play, that's another technique. And then the final technique on the congas that's different than djembe is we do what's called a hand finger. I call it hand fingers, some people call it heel toe. But you use your hand this way. And we play these muted tones. So, for example, to play a traditional pattern, we would incorporate this, which is a dry, muted short sound, with slaps and open tones. So we could play something like 1, 2, 3, 4. Something like that. That's a really real typical conga pattern. But I love the conga drums. It's really nice and they're melodic, and we can have several congas and they all have different notes, so you end up with melodies, and it's just really nice warm drum sound. A little bit heavier than the djembes, but not by much, and you can get sets of them, and it's really great to play the conga drum. Related to both of these drums is this drum. This is a modern style drum. This is a flex drum, but this shape we generally call it a shiko, or if it's a West African, related to West African drumming, we might call it an ashiko drum. Although an ashiko like this is really an American style drum. They don't really play drums like this in Africa. But they do play drums with this shape in Brazil, and those are called chimbal. A traditional chimbal is going to be bigger than this, but the basic shape, the idea, the sound of the drum, thin plastic head, it's going to be like Brazilian chimbal drum. This is a hybrid drum. The nice feature of this drum is it's super light, and then the head comes right off, and you can stack them like I have here. So here's 3 stacked up, and it weighs almost nothing. Very light and very convenient, and then you pop the head on, you just line it up and press it on. It just takes a second, and then we're playing. So we have bass. With the bass on here, I would play with my palm, with my fingers together. Not like a djembe so much, but you could still do that. But basically, like that, and then you could play edge tones with your fingertips. So the technique on here is a little bit like the technique on a drum called the darbuka, which I'm going to show in a second. I don't know where my darbuka is, but that's an Arab drum. That's coming up. Ah, thank you, Jim. Yeah, thank you. So techniques on the flex drum, the small chimbal would be like the technique on the darbuka. But here's another trick that I learned, which is if you want to hold the flex drum without carrying the weight, you put your foot on the strap, and then you can hang it over your thigh, and it basically holds all the weight of the drum. So that's what I would recommend doing, and then you can just kind of hold it really comfortably like that, and it won't go anywhere. And then you can play it that, you can play, you can also play with, playing around with maybe putting your hand in the middle, or your thumb, make a higher sound, something like that. All kinds of different things. Play with your thumbs like this, fingers, whatever you want to do. Okay, so that's the flex. So let's go to